Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who. Last time around we had Human Nature. What was that one about?
Well, forgive me, we've seen a couple of Torchwood episodes since then, and I've completely forgotten what this one was.
So the Doctor and Martha are in 1913, and the Doctor is human now.
Okay.
He is no longer a Time Lord. He didn't even remember being the Doctor. And this is all because they are being hunted by these creatures known as the Family. And because they're being hunted, the Doctor turned himself into a human because they don't know what he looks like. So he was hiding out there. Eventually they find them, and where we left off was John Smith being given the choice of who are they going to kill? Are they going to kill Martha or the matron there? So,
and it has something to do with the pocket watch.
Yes, there's also a young boy named Timothy who has the Doctor's fob watch, and that contains basically the Doctor's essence. So, and it's at this point that the Doctor really needs that back, but he doesn't have it, and Martha was freaking out about that. So,
and the Doctor is posing as a professor, and Martha is his maid.
Yes. So, and there were some troubles of the Doctor as John Smith was starting to fall in love with the matron there, and Martha didn't know what to do about that, especially because she was basically saying well, her heart's going to end up being broken because we're going to leave here at some point. He's going to become the Doctor again, but yeah.
And there was a lot of bullying going on.
There was a lot of British foppiness going on and bullying of people, and
the boys were also being prepared to become soldiers. We're not sure whether it was the Boer War or getting ready for World War I, which would break out the next year.
Yeah. So, and there were also principal approved beatings happening.
Well,
we didn't really make mention of that, but
sadly, that is still a thing. And I can't remember if they've just recently changed that law, but while I was teaching, the entire 27 years I was teaching, the law in the state of Oklahoma allowed corporal punishment if the school district's parents approve of it. And nearly 25% of all the rural school districts in Oklahoma allowed teachers and administrators to punish their children physically.
Well, and I don't know, probably in 1913 that was the parents were more open to that, I would probably imagine. So
and they base that on the Old Testament, spare the rod and spoil the child.
And they gotta prepare these youngins for the war on the Dark Continent. So my stereotypical British accent is failing me, I must admit. That was probably a bit more like old-timey New York than it was old-timey Britain, but you guys understand the gist of it. So
yes we do.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
let's move on.
Yeah, you understand, probably because it's I have to imagine it's one of the most fun voices to do as a British person is old-timey British person. I mean, it's the same thing for the same reason that you do the the old-timey newsreel voices in America. It's just goofy because nobody talks like that anymore. Yeah. So
I have to say though, having recently finished the stage version of Scarlet Pimpernel, I watched the 1982 movie, and Anthony Edwards played Sir Percy Blakeney, and his accent was absolutely overdone to the point where it was laughable. And nobody else in the entire show spoke like that. I mean, not the other members of the League of the Pimpernel, none of the other British people. And I just went, why would the director have allowed him to do that? I don't get it.
Well, yeah. And isn't it was it in Mary Poppins, Dick Van Dyke's accent was pretty bad.
Yeah.
So, though from what I hear, I have not seen Mary Poppins, by the way. But from what I hear, people that do like that movie, they're like, well, he's charming. He's incredibly charming in the movie, yes. At least. So,
now I've never seen the entire movie. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but yes, his accent is atrocious.
I saw the other day. I don't know if he was at like the Oscars or something else, but he was at some sort of show. I guess it must have been the Oscars. What else was there recently? And they said it's like, well, he's 98 years old. He's telling us he's going to live to 150, and he's just like prancing around the red carpet. And it's just like, I mean, I don't blame him. He probably will live that long with that kind of energy.
He's a song and dance man. I mean, he did Bye Bye Birdie on Broadway, and did his own show and several other things. So yeah, the man is he's very limber, very lithe for a man of his age.
I remember I was watching a YouTube video. They were talking about him, and one of them goes, "That's my theory. I think he already died. He's just still going. Like he has so much energy. His body just keeps going, despite the fact he's not really alive anymore." So, anywho, none of this matters. What matters is we're watching part 2 of this 2-parter. We've also got another episode of Torchwood this week, so stay tuned for that. We're going to start on the, I'll just say right now, 2-part finale of Torchwood Season 1. Although if I remember right, it's a 2-part finale, but they are still like, they're a bit more contained in their own stories. They just kind of lead one into the other, so. But we'll get to that, obviously, in Torchwood. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
Then let's just go ahead and jump right into this episode of Doctor Who.
Shoot you down!
Try it. We'll die together.
Would you really pull the trigger? Looks too scared.
Scared and hold.
You really
your breath.
should.
Combination. Do you want to risk it?
So much spirit.
What happened to Jenny? Is she gone?
She is consumed. Her body's mine.
You mean she's dead?
Yes.
And she went with precious little dignity? All that screaming?
Get the gun! Good work, soldier.
Good work, soldier. She got away.
Rubbish as a human. Come on!
Sister of mine, they're such a small little thing. Find a way in and spy on them.
So, Baines and one of the cleaning staff. There's always a woman involved. Am I to gather that some practical joke has got out of hand?
Foreign fields, war of the whole wide world, with all your boys falling down in the mud. Do you think they will thank the man who taught them it was glorious?
Don't you forget, boy, I've been a soldier. I was in South Africa. I used my dead mates for sandbags. I fought and bust my rifle when the bullets ran out, and I would go back there tomorrow for king and country.
Etc., etc.
Run along, headmaster, run back to school. And send us Mr. Smith!
I don't think they have laser guns in South Africa. Right, I have shot myself.
Soldiers!
Soldiers!
Look at them and tremble. Look at the way they sort of saunter about the place.
We're firing princes, you're in charge of the gathering. Please, sir, that's not acceptable. Report to your senior officer.
Get a few matches, we'll send the whole lot up in flames. That's a hell of a casting call.
Bones of the hand. Carpal bones, proximal row, scaphoid, lunate, triquetral, pisiform, distal row, trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, hammock, then the metacarpal bones extending in 3 distinct phalanges, proximal, middle, distal.
Well, you read that in a book.
Yes, to pass my exams. Can't you see? This is true.
I must go.
My mind is
Find out
melting.
what
I
you
must
got
leave.
them.
Tell me about Nottingham.
Sorry?
That's where you were born.
There's a sheriff there.
John Smith wouldn't want them to fight. Never mind the doctor. John Smith, I was getting to know. He knows it's wrong. Doesn't he?
Mr. Smith, if you please.
What choice do I have?
Means you and I both survived this. And maybe
Maybe I was given this watch so I could help. I'm sorry.
Lie to me, you filthy coward!
Oh yes, sir, every time.
You were really given it. You took it.
You're still in the shape of a girl. How strong is she, do you think? Does she really want to see this?
Oh. So, well, I'll give them credit, they are strong. King and country.
Come with me.
You're funny.
That's right. Now, take my hand.
So funny.
I'll take it all.
One of these boys has got the watch.
This one?
No.
This one.
No.
This one?
No.
This went on for several hours.
You're this doctor's companion, can't you help? What exactly do you do for him? Why does he need you?
Because he's lonely.
And that's what you want me to become?
What if it's them? I'm not an expert, but I don't think scarecrows knock.
They can burst through barricaded doors.
He's like fire and ice and rage. He's like the night and the storm and the heart of the sun. Stop it. He's ancient and forever. He burns at the center of time and he can see the turn of the universe.
Stop it, Sid, stop it.
Neither of you are making this appealing.
He's wonderful. Blasted thing. Can't even hear it. It says nothing to me.
Everyone's safe. And they all send their love, John.
Each time. Thank you. Did you see?
The Time Lord has such adventures.
Just to twist the knife a little further that's in your heart.
But he could never have a life. What are you going to do?
I can see why they wanted him to play Hamlet. To be or not to be.
It's empty. Where's it gone? You tell me.
Oh, I think the explanation might be you've been fooled by a simple olfactory misdirection. A little bit like ventriloquism of the nose. It's an elementary trick in certain parts of the galaxy, but it has got to be said. I don't like the look of that hydrochronometer. You shouldn't have let me press all those buttons. But, in fairness, I will give you one word of advice. Run.
You fell for it, fools!
And then we discovered why. Why this doctor, who had fought with gods and demons, why he'd run away from us and hidden. He was being kind. He wrapped my father in unbreakable chains, forged in the heart of the dwarf star. He tricked my mother into the event horizon of a collapsing galaxy, to be imprisoned there. Forever.
Oh, he is going off on this family.
He trapped her inside a mirror. Every mirror. If ever you look at your reflection and see something move behind you just for a second, that's her.
That's terrifying.
That's always her. As for me, I was suspended in time, and the doctor put me to work standing over the fields of England as their protector. We wanted to live forever, so the doctor made sure that we did.
No one is ever going to find that. No English schoolboys wanting to mess with the scarecrow.
Police and the army are at the school. Parents have come to take the boys home. I should go. They'll have so many questions. I'm not sure what to say.
Terrorists?
If the doctor never visited us, if it never chosen this place on a whim, would anyone here have died? You can go.
Would he have known exactly what was going to happen? I mean, he knew they were dangerous.
I mean, he could have picked like an island with a house on it.
It's coming, isn't it? The biggest war ever.
You don't have to fight.
At the time.
I think we do.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Nice.
Alrighty.
Before I forget, if you have not heard this, there is a recording of In Flanders Fields by a Canadian poet, if I recall correctly, but it's read by Leonard Cohen. If you haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube. It's very moving.
Alrighty. That is the end of that two-parter.
Well, that is certainly different from almost anything we have ever seen.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because it's one of those that it deals with the consequences of the Doctor, blowing through, which we kind of see that a bit, like Jackie has brought that up before and stuff. But I don't know. There's something about this, I guess, because you also see it. You see it more from the outside perspective because of John, and all he does is hear about what the Doctor is, and it becomes too much, really. Yeah. So
I'm really kind of surprised there at the end, though, they didn't also show us what happened to Matron. It's nice that, Tim Latimer, it was interesting, he does survive. He lasts literally, obviously, right up until he would have been, in 2006 or 7, he would have been about 90-something years old. That was nice. But, yeah, there should have been some mention of what happened to her as well.
Well, yeah. But yeah, it's a very interesting... Because you're right, with last episode, it's like, it kind of feels like, well, all right, we're getting there, we're these confronting the family and something is going to happen, and then it cuts off there, and it's like, okay, what are we doing for the next 42 minutes? And then... it's interesting using that time just going into more and more of John not wanting to let go, basically.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. And we also have the whole dilemma of the young boys taking arms, and basically showing that it's like, it's not a good thing. Not a good thing at all.
No. We're looking at that, though, from a 21st century perspective. In the 20th century, when I was in high school, the Vietnam War was going on. My dad had served in Vietnam, he had served in Korea, he had served in World War II. So today it's a much different world. Literally after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the world was supposed to have changed. We fight these regional wars. We've had the Gulf War, we've had Iraq and Afghanistan and Bosnia and all the rest of this stuff. I do think, though, having a standing army is still a good idea. Because, if nothing else, it is supposedly a deterrent. If someone wants to invade the United States, that's going to be nearly impossible because, in addition to the oceans being between us, two of our biggest allies are border mates, Canada and Mexico. So it's highly unlikely, despite the Red Dawn movie. I can't remember if you've seen Red Dawn or not. The Chinese and the Russians through Cuba invade the United States and take it over. And then there's the resistance group. The original 1984 movie was pretty good. I haven't seen the remake. But it seems impossible that that's going to happen. But, again, just for, if nothing else, what we term peacekeeping efforts, I do think a standing army is necessary. Again, my father and my older brother served. Both my uncles served. I never did serve because by the time I allowed my deferment to expire, the draft here in the United States never reached my number. So I went 1A for about 3 months. They didn't get to my number during the draft, and so from that point on, I literally went to the back of the line. If Vietnam had escalated, I still probably could have been called up, but I wasn't. I've never served in the military, so this is from a perspective of a guy who never served.
And, I mean, it is an interesting question, because it's like, even in the episode, it's like, okay, you know, should you... I guess the question is, should you be forcing these boys to train for that anyway? And it shows it's, you know, it's very difficult for them, and they, at the very least, they show it's like, it's difficult because they clearly don't want to take a life. So, you know, that's when the headmaster is like, well, they're straw. It's just like he said, they're all straw. And one of them, I think it's Hutchinson, who's like, so we didn't actually kill anyone then. And it's almost this like relief there.
Yeah.
And it's like, so on the one hand, it's like, well, should you be arming these boys at, you know, at this point in their life when they're trying to, you know, they're just going through school and, you know, they haven't figured out the world yet. They're incredibly young. Should you be arming them? But then there is also the other thing of, well, technically, I suppose an army of scarecrow men could come and burst through the door at any moment. But then that gets into just Doctor Who being silly.
Yeah.
So,
and again, the I guess that's a boarding school of 1913 is much different from the schools today. Would I want to have taught my sixth graders how to, you know, train for the military? No. But seniors, you know, when you're 17, 18 years old, I think you have a capacity that you could at least be basically trained, you know, just a basic training so that should it be necessary for you to defend your country. Now, again, invading other countries, you know, we can get into the whole, was the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq necessary? Personally, I don't think it was. I think that was a huge mistake on our part. But there is no doubt that fighting in World War II against the Nazis in Germany, and the fascists in Italy and Japan, yes, that was absolutely necessary.
I mean, I guess it's also just the question of, less of like, well, should we be doing this, and more, was there a choice for the boys? Like, most likely, these boys did not have this choice to train for the army. They were sent here by their parents, who made that choice.
Yeah.
And in 1913, nobody batted an eye about that.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually interesting. They actually bring this up a bit on The Sopranos. There's a point where Tony Soprano's son, he's just been a delinquent and he's doing all this stuff, and Tony basically, he gets so mad, he's like, well, I'm going to send him to military school. And this episode, by the way, released in about May of 2001, and you know, his wife Carmela is like, well, is this what we're training him to be? You know, this army of one, this trained killer. And Tony's like, well, it's just a little bit of, you know, military training. The U.S. hardly goes to war at all anymore. And I knew, because that entire season, it said on, you know, HBO Max, released in 2001, and I was like, well, that was like the most poor timing that you could ever say that phrase.
Well, again, if this is 2007, then they're looking at, you know, young British men who are possibly going to be training against the terrorists and the regimes in Afghanistan, the Taliban, and the ISIS later, and Al Qaeda. So that may have been part of the tie-in to this. You know, should modern day boys in the UK be going into Afghanistan and Iraq when it literally has nothing to do with us? You know, the whole thing about Vietnam, at the time, the United States said we have to contain communism in North Vietnam. We cannot allow the communists to expand into South Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos and Thailand and all that sort of thing. So I quite honestly didn't agree with that. Providing military aid to South Vietnam, sure. You know, essentially what we're trying to do in the Ukraine today. There are no American troops on the ground in Ukraine, but we are supplying them with the ammunition and the tanks and now the planes even and the cannons and all that sort of stuff to help them fight off the Russian aggression. So this may have been a reflection of what was going on in the UK at this time.
Yeah. I guess it's just a thing of like, I honestly don't know if they really go far enough with the idea, because it's like they presented a little bit last episode of like, well, you need to train for the Dark Continent and stuff like that. And it's just like, and now it's like, well, they are taking up arms earlier than they thought, like the main guy said is like, wow, war comes to England a year early. And it's like, okay, they have to do this, they're being forced to do this and stuff, they were probably forced to do all this training and stuff. But then that part of the story ends because then it becomes about John more than that.
Just had a weird thought. The student who was taken over, was his name Baines?
Yeah.
Okay. So the American president who got us fully committed into Vietnam was Lyndon Johnson, whose middle name happened to be Baines. He was Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ. Okay.
It might be a stretch. Might be a bit of a stretch, but yeah, it is one of those things where it's like they don't really like they bring up this idea of should the boys be training for all of this, and they don't really do anything with it because they need to focus on John and his turmoil. Pretty much the rest of the episode is focused on John not wanting to become the Doctor again, which is interesting.
Which is odd because he didn't really remember being the Doctor.
Yeah.
And therefore, and I understand he wants to stay there because suddenly he has vague memories of his childhood in Nottingham, but he's got a life. He teaches the young boys. He's falling in love with Matron. Doesn't remember that he wrote all this stuff in the book. So, it's an interesting, again, probably why the Royal Shakespeare Society or whoever they are, ended up asking him to play Hamlet because he plays that very well. That indecision.
Yeah, and it's John's life crumbling. Basically, it's like he's, before this like 2 months that he was there, he was just John Smith, professor at this academy. And, he was just a normal person. And now, just seeing every single piece of that being chipped away, the fact that he doesn't remember his childhood because he didn't actually have one. He just has these facts about a childhood, And all of these things, these crazy, ridiculous things that are happening around the school. And then he just keeps hearing this, doctor, and he does have his dreams, and he keeps thinking about it, and it's crumbling away at his, and probably too because it's like, to him, nothing about him is different. Like, to him, he is just a normal person, but all of this is crumbling away, and he's just thinking, am I nothing? Is everything I know just a lie? And the thing is, technically, yes, it is all a lie, and technically he's just a creation of the Doctor to go and hide away. So
now, I can't remember, in the first episode, did they say what he was teaching?
I can't remember.
Because it would have...
Oh, I think he was teaching history because he was reading about Napoleon to the class.
Well, that makes sense. If he began to really, bring back a lot of the memories, the fact that in 1913 they're looking back on literally, 8,000 years of war in man's history, starting with the Egyptians and the Sumerians and the Akkadians and the Chinese and the Harappans and right up to the modern time, it would have made sense. He could start to say, wait a minute, I'm seeing, no matter what we do, it always comes down to standing up to people who want to subjugate other people, and sometimes that means you have to go to war. So that would have made a nice little undertone to the whole thing.
It's an interesting thing because Joan at one point says, the John Smith I've come to know wouldn't send those boys out to kill or to fight, and he basically says, like, what choice do we have? And it is kind of the thing of, like, at that point he's seen these fantastical things, these walking, straw men and these guns that vaporize people and stuff. So he's scared out of his mind, and it's just like, well, I know we have people who can use guns. It's all we have right now.
Yeah.
So, and especially in his desperation to not become the Doctor again. So, and that's an interesting thing, just with, for all of this, in order for all of this to end peacefully, John Smith must die. But in a sense, it's not even like a self-sacrifice or anything. It's not even like a noble sacrifice. It's just X needs to happen so that it gets resolved.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because Joan at the end says, like, if the Doctor had not picked this place on a whim, would anyone have died? And it's true that technically he did pick this. He was very hasty as he was trying to turn himself human and everything. And yeah, I guess you could bring up the questions like, well, could they have just gone to an island? They go to an island where there's a house or something, and they just make up a story. It's like, well, we're doing research on the wildlife. The John Smith is there with his assistant, and then that's it. And there's nobody else. There's no scarecrows. There's no nothing. So if the family comes, maybe they hop right in the TARDIS and she takes off. So it is an interesting question, and how much that like ate up Joan at the end there.
Do we know when this episode came out? Other than 2007?
I'm not entirely sure, but I could look it up.
I'm wondering if it came out in November, on the anniversary of Armistice Day, around that time.
Maybe. The only thing I could think is that might be too close to... Well, maybe not. Let me just see here. No, this aired in May of 2007, or maybe June, I guess, technically, yeah. So, yeah, because I was thinking that might be too close, because we've got 4 episodes left of the season, and then they'll have the Christmas special. So I guess that still could have worked out, but...
Another nice touch there at the end, both the Doctor and Martha were wearing poppies, which again, if I recall correctly, came out of the whole Flanders Field things, because in the huge mass casualties there in the Battle of Flanders Fields, I can't remember if that's exactly what it's called, but in the poem commemorating that, they talk about the poppies growing row on row, and since the end of the Great War, the poppies have been used in remembrance of the people who died during the war. By the way, my grandfather, his great-grandfather, who I'm named after, fought in World War I. So, and survived, which is why we're here.
Yeah. So, and then probably one of the most memorable things from this episode is the ending, with how the Doctor deals with the family. It's just like one of the most over-the-top punishments for a villain, and it's very iconic of just the why this Doctor who's fought gods and demons, why did he run away from us? He was being kind. And it's just like, well, they want to steal the Time Lord's essence and live forever and everything, so he made sure they live forever. Just one of them chained up with chains forged in the heart of a dwarf star. One of them was tripped into a black hole. One of them's in a mirror, every mirror, and one of them is a scarecrow guarding the English countryside. Which, at the very least, Baines, I guess technically we know that Baines does die, because 5 billion years from then, the sun will explode and destroy him fully, even though he's suspended in time. Unless someone, before the Earth was destroyed, grabbed that scarecrow and was like, wow, we don't want to leave this scarecrow here, and took him to New Earth. That would be the funniest thing. They're never going to go back to New Earth again, but that would have been funny, especially in this season, if they had teased that. It's just like, they go to New Earth and they see just like this field. There's just one little scarecrow out there, and it's like, that's weird. But then maybe you can speculate that'd be funny. But yeah, but everyone remembers that ending. So that's basically that. Overall, what do you think of the two-parter?
Again, surprised it was a two-parter. You didn't set me up for that, and I'm always, wait, no, please, I want to watch the end of it.
That's why I never set you up for it.
There were a few minutes, I would say maybe no more than 5 or 6 minutes of padding in this second episode of, long sequences of, scarecrows marching, this, that, the other thing. But I didn't feel that I didn't think it was poorly written that way. I think, they simply had a great story that didn't fit in 42 minutes, so they just added some extra scenery there. But that's fine. Overall, one of the best I think that we've seen is I like the theme of it. I like all the acting. The kid who played Baines was really creepy. You might have noticed and I'm sure they did this on purpose. Whenever he was talking, he never blinked. His eyes were always completely open, and that's always creepy to watch someone do that.
Yeah. So, he was also. He had a minor role on in the first season of Game of Thrones, actually. He was like one of the whatever they were called. Why can't I remember? I've seen so much Game of Thrones and I literally cannot. The Targaryens, that's it. Wow, I'm really losing it. Like just like yesterday I was like remembering something from a show I haven't seen in years, and I thought, I really pride myself on remembering everything about every show I've ever seen, except specifically Torchwood. That's the one that always eludes me, and we'll get to that in the next Torchwood video. But man, I couldn't remember that for a second. But yeah, he had a minor role there. I want to say I've seen him in something else recently, but I can't think of it. So, but yeah, all of that was good. Next episode, I'll tell you next episode is not a two-parter. So we'll be moving on to episode 10, which is called Blink. So.
Oh yeah, this is one where I've seen a lot of people commenting about it as one of the scariest.
It's something. It is a really good episode. Like I said, all the remainder of this season is all good stuff. So. But that is basically it. With all of that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around any of those. There's a playlist with all of our modern Doctor Who reactions, as well as another playlist with every Doctor Who reaction that's on the channel. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.